MLB. Your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I brought this up before, but it's worth bringing up again. The San Francisco Giants are playing, they're just great. I mean, look at the Dodgers keep winning and the Giants keep holding them back. And the Giants, with the victory they had yesterday against the Atlanta Braves, no pushover team there. Giants have won 22 of their last 30 games. And they're doing so about this, a team that I have a lot of emotional connection to. I lived in the Bay Area for many years. My late father was a diehard New York Giant and then later San Francisco Giant fan. So part of me always feels a little warm, and did I mention fuzzy, when the Giants do well. And going into this year, I thought to myself, well, you know what? I hope the Giants have a winning season. Obviously, they're not better than Los Angeles. Obviously, they're not better than San Diego. Obviously, they're not better than Atlanta or St. Louis or some of the other teams I thought were. And maybe, just maybe, they'd have a winning season. Well, check the date. It is the 29th day of August, 2021, and the Giants have a winning record. The Giants have a winning record, not just for the season, of course, for the year. If they lose all the rest of their games this year, they will have a winning record. They are 84-45. They're on pace to win 100 games, and if they go on the most monumental collapse we've ever seen in the history of baseball, they've already cleared the hurdle I wanted them to clear this year. After a mid-80s win team, that's not bad for this Giants team. They're 84 wins now. It's not even the 30th of August. So the fact of the matter is the Giants are not just a good team, not expecting, whether it's the Lamont Wade Juniors of the world who are contributing big hits, or whether it's a pitching staff with Kevin Gausman having a borderline Cy Young season, the likes of Logan Webb and Alex Wood are there pitching great games. Jake McGee and Tyler Rogers are anchoring a bullpen that nobody thought was going to be much of a factor this year. And there are some familiar names. One of the most familiar names there is Mike Yastrzemski. Now, by the way, Carl Yastrzemski was my grandmother's favorite player. So let's throw in connections to my grandma along with my mom, or my dad. Sorry. I digress. Let's get back to the point. The point is they're also doing it with contributions of the likes of Buster Posey, who is having a phenomenal season after taking all last year off because of COVID. He has his 16 home runs. He's an OPS over 9. He's a 926 OPS. As a catcher, as a 34-year-old catcher, and being one of the leaders on this team. Who's also having a great year? Brandon Crawford. Brandon Crawford's having a phenomenal season. He has his 19 home runs. He's batting .294. His OPS is in the 880s, may sneak above 900 before it's all said and done. And they're getting these performances from players that if you are a casual Giants fan, you can go to the Giants game and think like, hey, there's Buster Posey. I remember him. I remember Brandon Crawford. Oh, yeah, that's cool to see him. They were also getting a very good season out of Brandon Belt, who's currently on the bereavement list, but he has his 19 home runs. So you're getting big home runs from Posey, Belt, and Crawford. The law firm of Posey, Belt, and Crawford are giving the team a potential 100-win season. And now something else I want you to think about. Let's say you're a casual baseball fan. And I remember a couple of times she would be watching the Giants game. She'd say, I don't recognize any of these names. I don't. But now, when she does, or some people maybe didn't watch the last couple of years because they're in. And instead of being a sea of faces that they don't recognize, there's a bunch of faces they don't recognize, but a few they do. A few, oh, there's my friend, there's my friend, there's my friend. And lest we forget, one of the main reasons for following a baseball team is not just the wins and the losses and are they going to win the pennant or whatnot, but it's also, there's my friend. There's my companion for the year. There's my friend who I'm going to be following all summer long. And sometimes it's important to keep a few names like that. So when a fan comes in, it's a sense of comfort. If it's all a bunch of names you never heard of before, that's slightly intimidating. It's one of the things that always intimidated me from learning new music. If I go into the music section, I don't know any of these bands, I don't know any of these bands, I cling to Talking Heads or Hall & Oates or the bands I grew up on. So if you come into a ballpark and it's 9 names you don't know and you have no connection with, whether or not they're in first place is almost not the point. You need a few people so the fans an entryway into following the team. And so with that, when they have to learn some of the new names, it makes it easier to be a fan. And Giant fans are great fans. Giant fans support their team. Giant fans show up to the games. I've been in San Francisco when the times were good and the times were bad for the San Francisco Giants. And there's been a ton of support, especially since they moved to China Basin, which is the best park in baseball. I call it China Basin because whether it's AT&T Park or Pac Bell Park or Oracle Park or whatever the heck they're calling it, I can't keep track, so I'm just call it China Basin. You're going to have to deal with that. Best new, relatively new tradition sport is rowing the boats up there. Fantastic. And they have to learn a few new names, but that's fine. Now, one of the new names they have to learn is Kris Bryant. Now, Kris Bryant came over from the Chicago Cubs in kind of a surprising move, as I thought, you thought, I think we all thought he was heading over to the Mets. But the kid who was, he grew up a big Giant fan. Above, it's in the high 8s. He's been contributing. And as I said, when I talked about the Yankees, these lineups don't exist in a vacuum. And so therefore, the addition of a player like Bryant might help a player like Posey or Crawford or Belt or Yastrzemski get some big hits from time to time. He is a new name that Giant fans will have to learn. I'm sure they'll be fine. I'm sure things will be just fine with Kris Bryant. But here's the deal. It reminds me of what the Cubs didn't do. The Cubs blew everything up. They blew everything up. And if you're going to be a casual Cub fan showing up to Wrigley Field in 2022 and 2023, I think with the exception of Jason Hayward, who they couldn't give away, it's going to be a bunch of names you don't know. I'm not saying a team shouldn't rebuild. The Giants did some rebuilding. Did some rebuilding within in their farm system. They did some rebuilding, giving players who needed another shot. There's one of the ones from the good times. They're one of the ones like, there's Posey, there's Crawford and Belt, like I just mentioned. There's a few names that I recognize that allows them to remain fans and have a reminder of the good times. Now, there has to be a gray area. Away and assuming that you're going to get something in return. Now, the Giants traded away in the deal to bring in Kris Bryant. Actually, I have to go to baseballreference.com, the single greatest website in the history of the planet Earth, because I actually don't remember off the top of my head who the Giants traded away. The Giants sent packing to Chicago Alexander Canario, and Caleb Killian. Now, they could wind up being the next Ernie Banks and Billy Williams. But teams have become smarter when trading away prospects, especially for players whose contracts are running out pretty soon. In a trade deadline deal are becoming fewer and far between. GMs are sharper. They value their prospects more. They don't throw in top 10 prospects or players with that ceiling for a rental. Now, those players, as I said, could wind up being terrific players, could give them the great depth. But that's also depth they probably could have got in picking up the draft picks, letting someone walk, or maybe having a stable veteran on the team as they rebuild from within. It would have behooved the Cubs to keep a couple of those players, to build around and to put the pieces of a potential new team in place. Now, the opposite end of the spectrum would be what happened with the Philadelphia Phillies when they won the World Series in 2008, and they kept doing victory tours for the next 5 or 6 years to the point where the players all broke down. And it was a tremendous negative effect on the team as they tried to rebuild. I get it. There's a gray area. There's a middle ground between let's never break up the band and let's just keep, let's just but they also wound up keeping Soto. They wound up keeping a few players from the World Series team. So when they do put together a quality rebuild, there will be a couple players still left around from the World Championship team that Washington fans are like, oh, there he is. I remember him.